Kol omer kra, va'amar ma'ekra, kol habasar chatzir, v'chol chasto ketzitz hasadeh, yavesh chatzir novel tzitz ki ruach Adonai nashva bo. Achen chatzir ha'am, yavesh chatzir novel tzitz, udavar Eloheinu yakum leolam. A voice says, cry out, but I ask, what shall I cry? All flesh is like grass, and all of its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, and the flower fades, when a wind from God blows upon it. Surely, therefore, people are like grass. The grass withers, and the flower fades, but the word of God endures forever. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar b'nodeshi yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yinaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek l'man shemo. Gam ki elech b'geit salmavet, lo ira ra ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorai, dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi rivaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai li'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides me on paths of righteousness. He revives me for the sake of his glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod, they comfort me. You set a table in sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. Your mother was one of 7 siblings, and you knew as you were growing up that for your b'nai mitzvah, for other family moments, those families would be there because your mother emerged from her childhood as someone who wanted family to stay close. She had a cousins club where she and her cousins would gather together. She wanted you to keep family close in your generation from other segments of the family, which you did as well. And certainly your mother was always pleased as your children remained close with each other. That would ultimately be her legacy, to be a grandmother and a great-grandmother to a family that forged relationships among themselves. She was a Depression-era child, and in addition to the closeness of family, she took other lessons out of her upbringing. One was to be capable and competent. At one time, she was working for the Navy Department. In fact, it was in that role where she first began writing to your father, who was in the service. At first, the writing was random to various different soldiers, but a connection was kindled, and eventually they met in New York and ultimately decided to be married and plan a future together. She helped your dad when they had the ice cream business. She handled the money. She did other things to support him in that business. She could handle herself competently in various situations in life. She was a good cook and a great baker. She kept a meticulous and clean home, very organized, was very good with her hands, artistic. She made decorations, table decorations, whether it was for b'nai mitzvah, for weddings. She made wedding veils, doll houses. She used power tools. From her upbringing, from her childhood, she also knew that not all things are ever certain in life. Her father passed away when she was 12, and a sense of pessimism, a sense of the gritty aspect of life certainly became part of her makeup. And yet she was a practical woman. She knew the value of $1, but she wanted to provide. You two always felt you had enough of what you needed growing up. She was not extravagant, but she wasn't going to have you do without either. She made sure you had what you needed. I know that getting groceries and buying other items that she needed became a science to her. Which grocery had the right price? Which store had the right product on sale? To shop with her, you needed some money and a roadmap of the city, and you were ready to go. One store was never sufficient. She knew and she appreciated the value of $1, and she wanted to get her money's worth. She was a lady who spoke her mind, and she could critique, and she would. Education was important to her. Jewish education was important. Faith was important. She kept a kosher home. Volunteering was very important to her. She spent many volunteering hours on behalf of Hadassah, on the board of the Hebrew School, the Maltz Museum. She did many things at Menorah Park. She collected for various causes as well. And she was a bartender during happy hour at Wiggins. Do we have a video of that? I'd like to see the video on the security camera. I'd like to see her bartend. Your parents would travel together. They took the family to Israel. They had a home in Florida, a farm where you would visit. Since your mother truly worried about the value of $1, in thinking of her life, I ask the question, did she get her money's worth? Because I think that would be an important question. That was a standard for her. Let's look at that. Did she get her money's worth out of life? You said she would cut out photos of her kids and her grandkids and have them around her. I think to her, her grandkids and great-grandkids were priceless. I think she got her money's worth. I think the family working together and interacting together, to her that was priceless. And so I think she got her money's worth. You found a photo of your dad still there in her purse or in her pocketbook to the very end of her life. I think that's priceless. I think that having her kids married and continuing to practice Judaism, having her grandkids having kids of their own and practicing Judaism, I think that's priceless. I think she had sufficient finances, that she was living in her own home until the end. She was 97 years old, because that's what she wanted, that she had helpers who she enjoyed. I think that's priceless. I think the fact that everyone in her family had what they needed, all these parts of her life were working, I think that's priceless. From a young lady raised in New York to the great-grandmother and matriarch of a wonderful Jewish family that includes her in so many of her memories and swears by her baking, I think she got her money's worth. I think she had a lot of moments that were priceless. We hope and pray today that she grew to realize that she got her money's worth out of life. She lived with a good name, and she died with a good name. Sydney?
I grew up believing my grandmother was a different kind of grandmother. She was not the grandma who wore rose-colored glasses and thought her children and grandchildren were perfect. She did not shower us with compliments and was very reserved about the way she showed her love. Arguably, she saw the things in us that we try to hide and overcome, the things that we don't want people to see. And you better believe that she let you know what those things were. She never forgot, nor did she let you forget when you did something wrong. As a child, this is the grandmother I knew. I didn't have the opportunity to see the softer side of my grandmother until I grew into adulthood. And that was when I realized how lucky I was to have grown up with her as a role model during my formative years. This chapter of mine and my grandmother's relationship taught me lessons that I can only hope future generations of females learn. And I hope I have developed even a few of these traits from her. If I haven't yet, Grandma, maybe you can help guide me in my pursuit. Grandma Roz was strong. And I mean strong. She demonstrated unwavering confidence and fearlessness in some of the hardest times we faced as a family. And she never let fear of consequences hold her back from speaking her mind. But she was also deeply emotional. Dad, this is a quality I see in you as well. Although she didn't lead it, emotions drove her every interaction, but she never allowed her feelings to induce weakness. Even in the most emotional of times, she stood up for herself and what she valued, and always seemed to have the last word, seemingly unaffected by any potential emotional distress. Maybe because she was stubborn. Dad, this is another quality you share. My grandmother was stubborn in an awe-inspiring way. Once she made up her mind, she stuck to her convictions without wavering even the slightest bit. She was independent. For those who didn't know my grandfather, he was an incredibly brilliant businessman. But this meant that he spent much of his life entrenched in Woodhill Supply, the business that my grandparents built. My grandfather did the hands-on work, but my grandmother was never far behind him, supporting the business's ever-changing growth. At times, her support was to the tune of, sell the damn thing. But she understood the importance of the business to my grandfather and to our family, which, for better or for worse, allowed her the time and energy to create her own outlets and build the life she wanted for herself, rooted deeply in chesed. Volunteering at Menorah Park and later at the Maltz Museum became her favorite activities. She made friends, gave back to the community, and probably most importantly, she inspired me, and likely her children and other grandchildren, to value giving. She also developed her own hobbies and built some of the most amazingly intricate doll houses I've ever seen. One of my favorites is a general store, complete with a doll standing behind a cash register and full of every item you could imagine. I used to sneak into the room where she displayed them and play a game, thinking of the most random items she might have missed in her creation. But I never seemed to guess one. I always found the most obscure items somewhere behind the glass. And she was creative as can be. She found uses for various objects in different ways in her doll houses and around her apartment. She used power tools to build and create. She sewed, knitted, and crocheted. In fact, one vacation in Florida, I had lost my bunny during an outing to the flea market. For those who don't know the importance of Bunny in my life, this sparked major chaos in 1992 and would probably induce the same panic today in 2019. But in a world before Amazon Prime, Grandma Roz sprung into action, knowing it would be days, if not weeks, before we could find a replacement. From a simple white washcloth, she fashioned a replica of my bunny, complete with 2 floppy ears and a soft blanket body. Now, she wasn't fooling me, even at 1.5 years old with that fake bunny. But it was her thoughtfulness and creativity that had us treasure this imitation bunny, who still sits in my childhood room today. I grew closest to my grandmother in the years after my grandfather passed. And it was in those years of watching the way she carried herself as a widow, lived her life, and managed her relationships, when my perception of the grandmother I grew up believing I had finally changed. I never really interacted with Grandma Roz's strong and intimidating side. She offered me a gentler version of herself, Or maybe I stumbled upon it as I desperately searched for something more than what I grew up knowing. The remainder of the stories I'll share come from the last couple years of her life, which may seem strange as I moved to New York City 7 years ago and was very far from her. Somehow, this didn't hinder our relationship. Maybe because my grandmother loved to kibitz, as she would say. Regardless if I was in Cleveland for a visit or on the phone, she always looked forward to kibitzing. Over the last few years, my grandma lived scared, alone, and vulnerable. I believe we grew especially close because I too shared her feelings. In a strange way, many aspects of our lives grew parallel within this time frame. Having grown up in the Bronx and on the Lower East Side, she was my closest family member to conceptualize what it meant to live in New York City. And also provided the added comfort of understanding what it was like to live away from family. We were both living alone, responsible for ourselves in different and changing ways, sharing concerns about finances and the best ways to save money on groceries and toiletries. Although we were both budget conscious, we agreed that an appropriate splurge was always the beauty shop. She would get her hair done in Lyndhurst. I would get my hair done in New York. And although it was far from the same budget, it was a luxury that we shared. On the phone, we would talk about love and how to find it. She would offer her 1940s ripened dating advice. I would listen and pick out the pieces that translated to 2019. It was rare, but I loved when she talked about her relationship with my grandfather, how they dated, decided to get married, meeting his family members. Her values were simple when it came to love, and undoubtedly informed by what she felt she needed in her own marriage. She always spoke very matter-of-factly, as if she was stating the obvious and it was impossible that anyone would disagree with her. And I never disagreed with her, even when she made comments that were completely incorrect. And later, in her moments of confusion towards the end of her life, I always just nodded along and listened to what she said. Although growing up, I don't remember specific times she told me she was proud of me. In our adult conversations, I could just tell that she was. She was always supportive. Sometimes I would count the number of times she would say, "Well, that's all right," in our conversations, as if she was giving me passes in any area of inadequacy. Growing up, we used to end our calls with me saying, "I love you," and her responding, "You too." But towards the end of her life, when I would tell her I loved her, she would respond, "You know I love you." And I did. Which brings me to this week. Until my mom called me Friday morning. I think I believed she would never go. Her stubborn self would never give up. Even as my sisters gathered to say goodbye to her, I admit I thought it was premature. She had been through so much over the past few years. We joked she had 9 lives. I selfishly wanted her to hold on until Passover when I was scheduled to be in Cleveland. I didn't even question that she wouldn't or couldn't be here. But I couldn't have asked for a better end of life for her. I thank my parents and Uncle David and Aunt Judy for listening to her and granting her her wishes to be at home. She loved her apartment. I will never forget when we brought her home from an extended rehab stay last year. The first thing she said when we wheeled her into her apartment was, "I can't believe I live here." I wasn't sure if she was woozy or confused, or just genuinely in awe of the place she called home. I thank all of her caregivers, Pat, Selena, Angel, Elaine, Barbara, and Candace, or should I say Sandy, for spending her last year on earth by her side, for putting up with her when she was angry, for entertaining her, and for keeping her safe. We got so lucky, and we are so very grateful to each one of you. I will always remember her, the life she built, and the gift of a beautiful grandmother-granddaughter relationship she allowed me to develop with her. Grandma, no eulogy is enough to recount 97.5 years of life, but we will continue to remember you in every dollhouse we see, with every rugelach or pinwheel cookie we eat, in every plastic shopping bag we fold, in Pesachdik sponge cake and chocolate mousse, with every pie on Thanksgiving, Christmas lights at Tradewinds or anywhere else, and with every passing generation of strong Kaufman women. May your memory and the lessons you taught us stay with us forevermore.
Please rise, everybody. El mole rachamim shochen bamromim hametzeh menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina b'malot kedoshim utehorim kazor rakia masirim et nishmat Razel bat Beryl udevora shahachal olama Began Eden tehe menuchata, Anabal harachamim hastireha, Beseter kanafecha leolamim, Utzror bitzrecha mit nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata, V'tanuach b'shalom amishkava, V'nomar Amen. May we remember all of the worthy and the righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life. God is now her portion. May she rest in peace. And we all say Amen. Let's be seated. We want to offer our condolences to Arnie and to David, to Susie and to Judy, to Jennifer and Dave, Deborah and Brandon, Sydney, Melissa and Matthew, Lainey and Jonathan, Barry, great-grandchildren, Jillian, Lydia, Molly, Lillian, Emma, Micah, Elle, and Bree. The family will be receiving friends for the Shiva visitation beginning today at the Kaufman residence in Orange Village, 3950 West Ash Lane. Again, 3950 West Ash Lane in Orange Village. Today, Sunday. Monday through Thursday, Shiva will continue at the Kaufman Residence in Shaker Heights. That's 2665 Cranlin Road. Again, today in West Ash Lane in Orange Village, Monday through Thursday at 2665 Cranlin Road in Shaker Heights. Monday through Thursday hours will be 2 to 4 and 7 to 9 p.m. The Minyan tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday will be 6:40 in the morning and 7:50 in the evening. We're going to now pause in our service to arrange the processional, which will take place, the burial will take place at Mount Olive Cemetery. Please remain in your seats for another moment. The pallbearers, however, should now come forward.